I started the recording, so I guess, uh, boom. All right, first
Boom.
iteration of this podcast. I don't know what we're gonna call this yet. To be honest, I was thinking of names, but I'll think of that later.
We'll fig-
So yeah,
yeah,
I
we'll think about
guess yeah. I mean, since we're gonna probably post this on like YouTube and Spotify, that's what I'm planning on doing, and then we'll cut this up into clips. Probably just have everyone introduce ourselves, whatnot. We'll start off on the line. Kevin, you can go first, and Eric, and then Ryan, and then I'll go.
Okay, so I'm Kevin. Not Kevin Pham on Instagram. That's about it. Coach out of the DFW area.
Okay, Eric, you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm cool lifting stuff, and I coach out of the Houston area. I coach a handful of people, pretty much all local to Houston, and I like it a lot.
I'm Ryan, Ryan 82 kilos on Instagram. I'm mainly a lifter right now, but also I've started coaching and have a few clients.
Say how
Um,
much you bench, Ryan.
What do I bench? 468 or 468 pounds? Yeah, at 181.
Swag.
I was talking kilos, bro.
212, 212.15.
Nice. All right, my name is Brendan. Instagram at bren.hui. Uh, Coaching in the DFW area as well as also like college student. So, yeah. All
And then
right,
tell them how much you hit off the hammer strength.
bro. I hit two plates in 25, bro.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was proud of that, bro. All right.
Awesome.
So let's dive straight into it. All right. All right. So I guess let's start off with like the underrated versus overrated cues for bench since we were talking about it earlier. So
Okay.
if anyone wants to start that off,
Mm,
I want to hear what
So
Kevin has to say.
yeah.
I was about to say for overrated cues, I tell people this all the time when they're like, "How do you get your back tightness?" I'm like, I think retraction is almost like an overrated cue, or like overly retracting is usually almost as counterproductive as not retracting. Like retracting enough. What do you guys think about that?
For sure.
mm.
Just retraction, retraction, retraction. Get your shoulder blades set.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that. If looking at my training from a few years ago before I got with Eric, I would really over retract, just try to cut my ROM in half. And in a way, it did cut my ROM in half, but I would just lose all my pressing power. And retraction can really only apply to like benchers that are less technical, so like a lower arch, higher ROM, because they're most likely going to have more tuck in their elbows. But when you get in shorter ROM and higher arch, you're going to want to chill a little more on the retraction.
Yeah, it's definitely it comes into like kind of the lifter's anatomy and whatnot because like obviously like there still has to be some like not like over retraction, but there is some like soft retraction that most of us do when we do bench, which is definitely still something to have. It's just like trying to teach lifters that because when lifters think of like retraction, they think about kind of over retracting their like shoulders and whatnot. And I think for that, it's just like kind of just it's mostly just trying to build the base of their information too. It's like trying to teach them like okay, like you kind of have the idea of retraction, just making sure like they don't do like too much in a sense.
Eric, do you have any input about that? About if you think retraction is mostly a solid cue, if you feel like there's more flaws fundamentally with it versus pros?
I think as long as you don't get too carried away with it, you'll be fine. It's very easy to just see on YouTube, look up like how to bench, and then it says pinch the shoulder blades back, and it's easy to get a little bit excessive with that. A bit more of the shoulder blade depression, just a little bit of the retraction, and a lot of people are fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of that, like kind of talking about retraction, another thing that is overrated that a lot of people talk about is like, have you guys ever heard when someone says like, oh, like bend the bar when you're like trying to bench and whatnot, and they're trying to utilize like their lats and back? I think that's like such a overrated cue, in my opinion, because it's like half the time, like when you try to use your back, you're like out of position most of the time.
Yeah, the back, if the technique is solid, if the fundamentals are there, it'll just come with it. It won't really be a thing that needs to be tried. It'll
Yeah.
just happen.
Yeah, I think it also especially for us since we like the reason why these cues like over retracting and like trying to like utilize your back more is also like in the context of like where the lifter's training at. Because obviously when we train at powerlifting gyms, we have like the TSS pads, Alico pads, all these like
Mhm.
powerlifting standard pads where we're able to like we're able to like properly utilize like proper leg drive, like making sure we don't like over retract and whatnot. But if you're at a commercial gym and whatnot, I think the demand changes because then it's like okay, it's a lot harder for this lifter to actually maintain like neck pressure, maintain their leg drive
Mhm.
when they're on like such a skinny pad or when it's like lower and whatnot. So that's probably the reason why also like these cues, like, like these overrated cues that we say have been brought up, is just like really in the context of like where this lifter trains at too.
It's a lot harder to learn a lot of these things because it's just so difficult to do it on a skinny pad or like low to the ground, high to the ground, whatever it is on these commercial gym pads. And if that lifter can just maybe go to a powerlifting gym for a month or so, and then they have to go back to their commercial gym for whatever reason, it's a lot easier to have that carryover from learning how to do it on a good pad and then learning how to do it like good enough on the bad pad wherever you have to train at.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because you can definitely notice like like level of like technique. Because you can like if we got lifter A that trains at a powerlifting gym and then lifter B that trains a commercial gym, you can give them the same information, but the application is going to be different because one has access to actual like comp equipment where these cues that we try to throw at them are better utilized as compared to like someone at a commercial gym. So then because of that, it's like obviously what you said earlier, like someone on a good pad will still maintain like somewhat good technique on like a commercial gym pad as compared to someone on a commercial gym pad going on to like a actual like competition style pad.
Exactly.
So I guess while we're on this topic, I kind of have experiences, but more like the opposite, where like I still try to teach better bench cues to some of my lifters who train at like a crunch. I have one from New Mexico who is training at a place called Choose. The funny situation there is that his mom works as like some kind of like fitness instructor. She teaches classes, and so he has access to multiple commercial gyms. And when he switched over to the TSS pad, almost everything stayed fundamentally the same, but he just felt stronger. So I would also want to bring up the fact that that like there are differences in like good pads, bad pads, commercial gym, powerlifting setups. But for myself, I noticed that at least the pro of them doing it off of a commercial gym is that they understand like neck pressure, how do I set my traps, my scapula, my feet. Then at least when you get into a good setup, they're stronger at the very least, or they're fundamentally more sound.
Yeah, if they can get good or like just good enough, as good as they possibly can on a commercial gym pad, and then their meet day is on like a really good pad, usually they get a buff or they feel so much better. They're like, wow, my bench feels on fire today on meet day,
Yeah.
but they're just benching on a way better pad.
100%,
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Like that's what happened with me and Eric when we were in Reno. He got a buff from the gym pad that we were using.
Yeah. It's all fun and games till you see on the competition and it says like the equipment being used is the original Lico pad.
Believe it or not, I'm in California. I'm in California right now, and they use the original LecoPad, and it wasn't that bad actually. It's just
Oh
that
yeah.
it's a little bit. I heard rumors that they're actually supposed to bring back the original LecoPad. Like some people are requesting for it.
Mm.
I like what they have now. It feels
The
nice.
Sky pad,
It's
yeah.
modern. Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
I
for
hate the
sure.
old one.
I do not like the old
Yeah,
one.
the old one's so bad. It's all like honestly, it's only doable to bench on if you're like shirtless. That's really it. Like if you're not
I
shirtless,
mean,
you're gonna slip.
I noticed that more of the longer ROM, low rib cage style benchers actually prefer the older LecoPad, since we did mention that earlier. At least Ryan did about the difference between a high rib cage, low rib cage position style bencher.
Mhm.
So I think that's just very preference.
Yeah.
Like the less skilled you are, that's not a bad thing though. But like the more brute strength you are, the more the different kind of pads, commercial gym pads, you can get away with. But if you're super high skill, you need to maintain that super high skill on these slick pads, and it's just difficult.
Yeah. I guess like kind of transitioning into this is like we're talking about like kind of skill and technique. So like when would y'all find yourself like reaching like a state of like satisfactory with the lifter's technique, where like the lifter sends you videos, and it's just like, when is the point where you just like you don't really say much about their technique because you find it as like, oh, it's like solid for them.
I'd
Ryan, do you
say
want to chime in? Sorry, Eric or Ryan. One of you two, both of you
Yeah.
at the same time. Fuck it.
Eric can go first.
I'll go really quick and then I would say when the main thing is progress. Like that's the name of the game. As long as they're progressing and as long as they're relatively healthy for the most part. Like if there's some small aches and pains, that pops up every now and then. But if like one pack is just taking a much bigger beating than the other, then something might need to be changed. But the main thing is progress. And if it looks fluid, if it looks clean, there we go. And if the number is going up, that's the most important thing.
The whole thing for me is like, you look at all these people and you can normally tell when someone's strong by just the way they're warming up. It's like their bench is gonna like look nice. It's gonna look efficient. It's gonna look right. If you're like all uncomfortable, like it's just, there's got to be improvements there. But as long as you're progressing at a steady pace and like no pains, no aches are showing up, then you most likely are fine.
What if I don't warm up?
Okay. I'll, I'll definitely say like the most important thing when I look at technique would be like, I always think about force prediction over range of motion, because like, I think a lot of people, like especially for bench, like even I had the idea. I was like, oh, in order to be a good bencher, like I try to have a high arch, like, oh, let me get max grip, neck pressure, like full leg drive, like extended legs. Like no, like what's efficient for one person is gonna be completely different for another person, because it's just like when you look at like lifters' anatomy, like their biomechanics, like one person has like a longer torso compared to this person. Like obviously one, like the longer torso individual is going to be able to have more rib cage like extension in order to actually have a high arch as compared to the short torso. So it's always gonna, for me, it's always gonna be about like, okay, like how is relative snackness like in this person's like technique, like it's what Ryan said, do they look comfortable? Like you can tell when like a lifter is pretty efficient if their tech, whether or not that be like the ideal technique, like whether it's like as long as it looks clean, then that's efficient for that person, whether that even be like they have a short arch, like closer grip, but if it looks relatively clean, that's probably relatively efficient for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think we're all just agreeing about the same things here, despite the fact I haven't even said anything. But I think there's going to be a time in a lifter's career where we understand that movement and the technique pattern is sustainable. It's essentially like, are you able to maintain the workload of your program? Is it making you stronger? Are you able to execute on top end? Because, like sometimes lifters could be like, I misgroove. It could be like maybe a technique just isn't sustainable when you're trying to go ahead and attempt anything that's above 90%. Like that's very, very true. I've had those issues with some lifters. And so those are just some takeaways there that I feel like we all agree about like, are you comfortable? Are you able to actually execute lifts? Like, is it causing any aches and pains? And why is it causing aches and pains? Because obviously the more efficient you are, the better your program is just going to go, and vice versa. Like, obviously the better your programming is, the stronger you get.
I think
Efficiency will look different for everybody, but it'll still look like relatively good. It'll still look relatively clean, and it's not going to look like the worst thing in the world. And then that person's calling it efficient. It'll still look good.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And then I guess like kind of on the topic about efficiency, like a lot of people like when they have like these different like techniques like cues, grips and whatnot, people tend to forget that like you're also like your muscle, like the demands for certain muscle parts changes, whether you be like a close grip bencher or like a max grip bencher. Obviously if you're like a max grip bencher, the demand for like your chest and like shoulder internal rotation is a higher demand as compared to if you're like a close grip bencher. So then it's one of those things where in programming too, it's like, okay, I think that's also a big consideration to take with lifter efficiency in programming, is like the programming should be able to reflect on how they move for like in a sense, because let's say like this person's benching like 4 times out the week and they're like, a max grip bencher. It wouldn't make sense to have them do like a chest accessory like every single bench day, for example, because they already utilize like the full capabilities of their like chest and like whatnot in order to bench efficiently. So it wouldn't make sense to like program like have that reflect on their programming. So efficiency should always reflect like with programming as well.
Yeah, usually the more efficient someone is, the more they can handle. So maybe they can handle like a set of 8 reps or something like that. But if they're just not efficient and then they get like rep 1, 2, 3, and 4 is good, then they kind of start to slowly crash on rep 5, 6, 7, and 8 as they get out of position. They're maybe not using their legs anymore. Like for a squat, they're not using their legs anymore. They're using all their back, or maybe for bench, their shoulders get out of position, and now instead of their pecs and their triceps, they're using all shoulders and they're just dying out, and it makes it much harder very fast.
And then I guess like kind of in that topic, then just like this is not even a question on the notes, but I'm just gonna with rep ranges, right? Like we already know that like we wanted to like depending on how efficient they are is like the amount of rep ranges like they could handle. Do you guys ever see like yourself like lowering or hiring like the reps in relation to their technique?
If they're more efficient, I'm open to making the reps a bit higher.
Mhm.
Then they can do like maybe they're doing a set of 5 and then it turns into a set of 6 one block, and then later on it turns into a set of 7, but they're just able to handle it really well, and maybe they're even able to do the same weight, whatever that top set of 5 was, they're still able to do it for that top set of 7.
Mhm.
And now it's like a heavy set of 7 is clean.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that answer. And so, kind of like the thing that goes into that is obviously like when it comes down to movement technique, even programming. And the question here was, as a lifter improves, do we increase or decrease exercise prescription? We kind of get into the point of like, how has it changed my lifter, the demands, their needs? It's kind of like an ever evolving like lifter profile. Like, what does my lifter actually need to get stronger at bench? And so I think it could go in both directions. Like I had some lifters that have been less efficient. And so, I mean, not necessarily less efficient, but we increase the range of motion, which then forces us to decrease the amount of reps in the exercise profile. And I have lifters that had, reduced their range of motion, and, vice versa. I've increased the reps. And even during different blocks of training, I do notice that sometimes they have increased intensity demands versus volume demands. So I think it go in either direction, truly. I don't know. That's really interesting. It's making me think. But I probably think more after the podcast.
Yeah.
More about the opposite, about like when does it change in the opposite direction, but it's still good.
With not even just increasing the reps, but maybe the weight can be increased more as well. Or if they have a certain percentage based back down, now we can do a lower percent just because it's so easy for them to tolerate heavier loads.
Mhm.
What do you think, Ryan?
I think me and you had some like troubleshooting with that. It's like, oh yeah, like I'm pretty efficient and I need all this workload to progress, but it's just we took off a few sets and it ended up being better just because I didn't need as much volume. And then we also added like a primer single, so to get the weight up on a tertiary day, and it's I mean that's worked really well, but obviously it's going to be different from person to person.
Yeah, and it's like it's easy for you to handle that primer single because you're efficient. If you weren't efficient, it'd be like really hard. Like that primer single, instead of priming you, it might actually just beat you up, and then the next day you're done for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of like, let's kind of go towards like primer days then. So, like, in terms of like priming, right? We obviously kind of know that the idea of priming is that we're trying to fill in a certain gap on the primary day. So, like, kind of like, what do you guys take into consideration when you like try to make a primer day into like for the primary day? Like, is there any certain like structures like you guys kind of like already like have biases towards, or you always just try to look at like what the lifter like genuinely needs and tries to like think off of that?
With bench, it's a bit different because there's just more days. But with squat and with deadlift, maybe rather than adding like a primer single or a primer top set, whatever, they might just be able to push the secondary some more, and then that's enough to close the gap in between the secondary and the primary.
Yeah.
If it's not about structures that we bias, I mean, I am actually really biased towards primer singles for bench press. But I do it more in the sense of an athlete's intro block where I'm trying to figure out maybe like which days are feeling stronger, maybe what did the previous day kind of look like. So most of the time when I program a new athlete, it's kind of like I program like a secondary, a primer single, and I will program maybe like a primary single. And those are just me trying to test out responses throughout the week to figure out a person's exercise profile, which then goes into what you said about filling in gaps and demands, where we're slowly developing that out and being able to identify what do they need to be stronger.
Yeah. I'll definitely like whenever I try to like for bench at least it's like yeah we're doing more days but I always want to make like if a lifter like they respond with like hey like my tertiary and quaternary bench day feels like stronger than like my secondary and primary then I kind of look at it as like okay why is that the reason because I don't want to just make that switch immediately just because they tell me like they feel stronger it's like okay what's the reason that's making that feel stronger and the primary and secondary feeling flat and I tend to like kind of I've been using like ascending sets on the primer bench day a lot for like certain lifters that are pretty efficient on bench. Just so like I always want to make sure when I think of like a primer day, it's like okay, I understand that they need some sort of like exposure to like some sort of like percentage or like at least like a heavy weight in a sense in order for them to feel prepared for their primary day. And some I do coach some individuals that do just have like a primer single, but that's for like kind of a different reason. Like one of my lifters, like Drew, we've been experimenting having like top sets on like each bench day now. So like because he would kept responding saying that like his Monday, which was his tertiary, and then Thursday being his quaternary bench day would feel stronger, and then he would come in on his secondary and primary feeling flat. And at first I thought that was like accessory work, but then when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, you have a pretty high intensity exposure on your secondary primary, obviously, because it's the primary secondary. So why if we just like have you at least have some sort of exposure on your like a good amount of exposure on your tertiary and quaternary day because off the top of my head it's like the tertiary day which is like 3 sets of Spado, like straight sets, and then his primer bench day was like the ascending sets that I just told y'all. So because of that, my deductive reasoning was like, okay, like he probably isn't getting the like exposure that he needs to carry over into his secondary day, which or like primary day, which leaves him a lot more flat. So then I gave him a top set on his Monday session, and then on his Thursday, he has like a fatigue single after all his ascending sets in order to get him like that intense exposure because I know that he also on like all of his lifts at least he kind of he gasses out after like the top set, which is why I like to try to utilize ascending sets. Either that or I try not to like have him pushed like too hard. And then if we go on to talk about like the secondary day, yeah, I do have some lifters that just genuinely push their secondary and they feel good on the primary. But there are some lifters that I have that can't like push their secondary too hard or they feel beat up on the primary. So I've actually found success like filling in gaps with like accessories that are a primer in a sense. So like for example, maybe like utilizing like a belt squat in order to prime like their primary squat session, because if they like respond with like, oh, like I feel like no pop out the hole, it's like, okay, like I know that they need at least some sort of exposure with their legs. So it's like, why don't I just utilize like the belt squat in order to see like what happens?
Yeah, I told Eric when we were in Reno, that's like your biggest thing right now in terms of like athletes, like, you treating your athletes' accessory work almost like they're, um, it's like going to be the term after quaternary. I can't think about it off the top of my head. But essentially, you treat it just as important as the primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary functions. Like you treat that as like something additionally to not necessarily just be accessory work, but actually accentuate more of their program, which is, but you've been doing really great at, by the way.
you.
So yeah, no.
It's
So
all about filling in gaps, like you guys said.
yeah,
If
he's
there's no
filling in
gap,
gaps
then we're
really
good.
strong with accessory work. Yeah. And then let's have Ryan talk a little bit about the top. And then after that, I actually have a question for you, Brendan, and for Ryan. Like this one's just
Okay.
gonna be like a little bit more interesting because you guys are
Okay.
both like just a little bit newer to coaching.
I think for me, it's like the accessory work. I'm starting to run it in blocks now, to where it's like my week 4. It's usually like there's a gap there, so I'll bring it back because I won't need it as much, and I'll chill a little bit just to keep my body fresh, because there was before days I squat 3 times a week, which is already a lot, and I would have a belt squat day on the 4th day that I trained, and it would just be like way too much if I were to push like 3 plates. I'm loading that up every single day. It just gets too much, and so sometimes maybe like working with extending sets just to get you moving and just to get you up a little bit in weight to get you ready. But you don't
Yeah.
always got to push it like 3 by 10, like RP 9.
Yeah. And real quick, just for the people that are listening, this isn't like a pitch shark belt squat where like it's free plates. You're talking about the Rogue Rhino, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that shit's heavy, bruh.
It's
That's
hard as
why.
fuck.
No, somebody heard free plates on belt squat. It's like, man, what the fuck are you squatting? I just want to point that out real quick.
Yeah. So I even drop that down to 2 plates sometimes. Like it's just it's just gonna be too much.
Hmm. I guess. Wait, Kevin, you want to ask your question first, or like I can go? 'Cause I have
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. So the question I have for you, Brendan, and you too, Ryan, because obviously you guys have clients, is what do you guys think is like your best success story with an athlete's bench success, or what programming tools and what demands did you see with a client that you really felt like contributed towards that athlete's success? Because like obviously sometimes when we coach an athlete, you have like a natural rate of progression, but what stories would you guys want to share that's like, oh damn, I did that. Like now that athlete is benching this much, and I felt like with a different coach, you wouldn't have as much success.
Brendan, you want to go?
Yeah, I was definitely gonna say like probably Drew, just because like me and Drew we've been working together for a while, and it's like the knowledge I have now wasn't like what I had back then when I first started coaching him, for sure. And it's just like it's one of those things where like we definitely grew together, and it was trial and error for sure when it came to his bench programming, because um it was like back then, like looking back at it, I was like, okay, I didn't really truly understand the extent to like how his bench was like moving and whatnot. Like all I really helped him with him back then was just, like kind of a technique and whatnot, trying to like get him more efficient, right? Because like when he like first started with me, he didn't even know what like how to actually like properly like internally rotate his shoulders was like. So there was that. But yeah, I think now for sure like we've kind of really nailed down like kind of talking about like his bench programming and whatnot, trying to really understand like okay, um like we know that you could handle like a top set exposure like on each day. It's really just about like how we kind of do it in like a wave, and like making sure like we like kind of manage like your fatigue well, accessory work well, and whatnot. So I'll definitely say my biggest success story would definitely be with Drew. So
We need to see Drew bench 130. We need to see him load up the white.
yeah, we'll do it at a Pinnacle Strength meet in January. So it will be
Not if
done.
I
Yeah,
can help it. Not if I can help it as head judge.
I saw Drew yesterday. He's looking strong. He looks like it's moving,
He
moving and
is.
grooving.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah,
He
I saw
is.
his secondary. I saw his deadlift set from yesterday. Yeah, I saw you in the back, Eric.
Yeah. No, his programming is actually like out of my entire roster, his programming is definitely the most unique out of everyone that I coach, for sure. Because if I just like say his like microcycle structure right now, he's training 5 days out the week, which is kind of like relatively normal for a lot of people. But the actual way that it's structured, it's like his tertiary slash spotto bench day is on Monday. Tuesday's his primary deadlift, secondary bench. Wednesday's his secondary squat, and then Thursday is his primer bench, and then Saturday it's an SPD day. He has primary squat, primary bench, and secondary deadlift. So it's one of the more unique ones on my roster for sure, and there's a lot of reasons to it. For for the sake of this podcast, like I'm not gonna explain it, but yeah. Ryan, you wanna go ahead and answer the question from earlier.
Mhm. So I'm still relatively new, so I'm very much into small changes. So you actually figure out what works. Is I could dump all the information on somebody, and they're gonna just maybe pick up one or two things, and that could even fade away over the next few sessions. But
Mm.
one thing that one of my athletes struggled with was like losing all tension at bottom. Like his bench wouldn't look bad, but it would just be like very touch and go. And then I would tell him like, yeah, we need to like start moving these pauses to get these pauses a little better. And
Oh,
you
I
could
get it.
tell, yeah, you could tell whenever the pauses were longer, he would kind of just lose everything, and his butt would start coming up because he would start try to force the weight up. But one thing I'm really having him do now is focus on keeping the tension throughout the whole lift and keeping that butt down and just pressing straight back up.
Okay, and that's for like actual like active cueing. You're telling them what to do after
Yes.
most training session. Okay, okay.
Mhm.
I gotta switch him to sinking. What's his weight class?
He's in between 82 and 90. But
Oh, he's heavy enough. He's heavy
no,
enough. I'd be like, sink that bitch.
he's not. His bench leverages aren't actually that bad. He's pretty technical. Like he can be pretty technical.
Okay, yeah. Do you think there's other variables that are going into that? Do you think, that are outside the program perspective? Do you think it's maybe the equipment? Do you think it's anything actually wrong with his body? Do you think it's just all mental? Like, I forget what Ryan's telling me, despite the fact he benches way more than me.
Um, I think his competition equipment is fine. Like he trains at Rise, so it's it doesn't really change too much. But it was more of just like a mental thing, and possibly like taking advice from other people is like one thing I'm very like big on. It's like you got to be careful who you take advice from, because one person told him like he's got a bench in that J shape, like bring the bar further down his chest and press further back up. But
Oh,
he's
the
already
J
like
curve.
shorter ROM. Yeah, he's already
J curve,
shorter ROM. So I
bro.
told
No,
him like
that's
you
perfect. No, that's perfect. Tell him to sink and J curve that hoe.
yeah, so he just didn't need to be doing that, and it's more like it's just something he needs to learn. That's just like a little bit of a learning curve right there, is keeping the tension throughout the whole lift.
I'm just laughing because I know one of Brendan's athletes. I'm talking about Luis, by the way. He trains
Oh,
at Texas State in the rec center. I think somebody told him to look at the Zealand and only squat and extension.
yeah. Yeah, they're like, dude, you should like look up to the sky when you squat. And I was like, what the heck, dude? Like, okay. But yeah. Kind of
I'd be telling my sorry, I've been
like,
telling my athletes there's no bad cues, just use them all.
dude. Speaking of queuing
Cue
then,
everything.
yeah, just queue extension, queue protraction, dude, just do everything, bro. No, but speaking of queuing then all right, when we talk about like teaching technique, obviously, um, what do y'all seem to bias more in terms of like teaching like technique slash cues? Like, do y'all tend to try to like kind of build the information like as each session goes by, or do y'all try to like dump it all out?
I like to build the information, and sometimes someone new will come to me, or just a new athlete, and there's like three things wrong with their bench, or three things that need improving, and I like to give them one cue for just like a week or two, and then once they have that a little more dialed, then give them another cue for the next couple weeks, and then after that cue is also locked in, give them the final cue, and things really come together that way. Giving them it all at once, I find myself just speaking a lot and telling them a lot, and it's kind of like even if they were to do it, it's kind of just like an information overload, to where it's just too much at once. It gets confusing. They're trying to do one thing and also trying to do this other thing that they've never done before, and now their bench just isn't clicking. So
Yeah.
one at a time.
Yeah, I think it also depends on like kind of also like the context of the lifter, because if we talk about like this lifter is completely new to powerlifting, yes, it is going to be information dump overload on them and they're not going to understand anything. But if you have like a relatively like kind of basic IQ lifter where like they understand the concept of leg drive, they maybe understand how to actually like create like ribcage extension and whatnot, then it'd probably be a little easier to like throw multiple cues. But obviously it's like in the context if you're coaching them online or in person, I think that's another big role that comes into play on like how to teach cues as well, because it's like, you know, teaching cues in person and online's two different things, which is a big
Yeah.
thing. And I think that's another big thing that like a lot of reason like my lifters have gone in pretty like efficient is that like most of the lifters I coach, I train with them in person most of the time. So they either like, you know, look at people that are around them that are efficient, or like I teach them in person on how to be like, you know, more efficient. And then in the result, it's like I'm probably teaching them multiple cues at once, but not to like a certain extent where like I'm taking up like 30 minutes of their session just talking. So
Yeah. Which I'm a huge fan of the fact that you brought up like athlete IQ, lifter IQ, because that does play like a role. It does play a significance. Like one being able to actually talk to your lifter in a way that makes sense. You know, like I saw like a post today, and it was like it doesn't matter how smart you are if you're not able to break down information and be able to give it to your client, right? And so there could be some people that are like talking about now, like, oh, Brendan said ribcage expansion. Like, what does that mean? And I'm like, just fucking arch in your upper back. Like, that's gonna be a different way to say it, right? But you know, it's not technically what it is, but you know, then the person's able to visualize it and it's like, oh, I have some conceptualization of what they're saying. Or, you know, we're talking about internal rotation of the shoulder blades, external rotation, and we're talking about like, you know, so like obviously one way is to break down information, convey it. You know, I have some lifters that learn kinetically, visually. It's pretty rare for a powerlifter to learn audibly. Like you can't send a voice message and it has like a 5 minute voice message and it's basically you roasting your lifter about why this shit looks horrible and for them to completely be like, I understand it now. But I do like the fact that Brendan did mention like actual lifter IQ. Like that does play a role in how you're able to relay information and how much can you do at a time.
Yes.
yeah. Ryan, you got
Yeah.
anything?
Something I learned.
Oh wait, Eric, go.
Wait, no, Ryan goes after me. But something I learned was just after talking to someone for 5 minutes, if I'm trying to help them out, trying to cue them, whatever it is, if they don't understand it within 5 minutes with that, with whatever I'm saying, they're not going to get it within like an hour if I just keep repeating the same thing. So I need to find a way just to change the verbiage and get it through their brain,
hmm
because it's people need different words. Some people just need to see what's going on. Some people need a video. Some people need the in person, and the in person really speeds things up.
Yeah. I think also another thing that helps would be like kind of like when people think of cues, they genuinely try to like internally think about cues, like, oh, I need to, you know, press hard on my neck. Like they try to constantly think about that in the entire time, or like, oh, I need to, you know, keep my like shoulders like internally rotated the entire time. Like they keep trying to, you know, genuinely think internally most of the time. But like a big thing, shout out Theo, was like cues are meant to be able to be used to how to feel a certain movement, not to actually think about it. Because you know, if someone like is like deadlifting for example, and they keep thinking about like, oh, I need to push my butt back to the wall, they're not gonna be able to actually lift the weight. All they're gonna be thinking about is trying to push their butt back to the wall. So it's another thing is like cues should be meant to be used to understand the movement, not actually like think about the entire time.
Yeah, shout out to Nimbus Strength Systems.
Yes, bro.
Shout out Nimbus. Yeah.
Shout out Nimbus.
Ryan, you want to go?
Yeah,
What
sure.
do you
Kind of going off of like what Brendan was saying, it's like you got to keep things consistent. It's cues will help, but if you're like only applying that to like a top set, it's like you're gonna get a little fuzzy. So it's like apply that to each warm up, especially like back downs is kind of where you want to make the change at first. As I would say is like have the lifter do their top set as normal, and then you introduce the change on a back down, just so it's they've already got through some of their sessions, but it's making that one little change. You got to keep that over at least like a week or two, and you really want to nail that down.
For sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, I like that. Even for myself, I don't warm up enough, so maybe I need to introduce cues as I warm up.
Yeah.
Holy. All right. I guess. I lost my train of thought. Oops, dude. Guess
Hold up. I got the same access to the list. Let's see what do I want to talk about.
yeah. I was gonna bring up the question. So, um, when would you guys see like kind of when would you like rotate or keep certain accessory work?
Should I just go first or?
Yeah, if you have an
Yeah,
answer to that,
Sure.
go for it.
I mean, we talked about, Brendan, what you're doing, where it's like obviously you're using accessory work to fill in the gaps a lot of the time. And for me, I kind of program accessory work just more for the purpose of like, hey, let's get jacked. Let's actually put some muscle on the frame, help out body composition. And so, unless like I don't see there's any more progression, most of the time this is on the lifter's part. I just rotate accessory movements when they're a little stale, unless I feel like there's an accessory movement that heavily contributes to the success of their lift, where it's going in terms of the mesocycle, the macro cycle. So that's just when I rotate, when like obviously it's stale on their end.
Yeah, I see a lot of the accessories just for more muscle down the line and just for getting jacked because that's fun, that's cool, and it's power lifter with a lot more muscle will get stronger than a power lifter with no muscle. But some accessories definitely keep things in check, and it's important to keep those in because if you take them out, then things can kind of spiral and get out of check. Or maybe something pops up and then that accessory is needed, like Brendan was saying, to just fill in the gaps. And now that new accessory can keep things in check.
I think at the end of the day, it's like you should have the like three basic accessories for like one for each of the compound movements. Like example, like bench could be like dips, squat, could be belt squat, which could apply to deadlift, or you could have like hyperextensions, which could also apply to deadlift or squat, like both of them. But at the end of the day, you need to enjoy doing your accessories because then most of the time you're just not going to do them. So
Yeah,
it's not going to be the biggest deal if you have someone from a lat pull down change to like a low row or something like that. Yeah, obviously it's going to be like different muscle groups, but if say someone enjoys that more, you know, it might be better just to do that.
Yeah, if they enjoy it more, they'll be able to just push it more and they'll get
Mhm.
way more out of that.
Yeah.
for sure. It's like kind of going into it more. It's like when I know like how me and Kevin program, like we like to put in like your choice on certain accessory works. And for me, like I've developed more of my reasoning behind it. So whenever I look at accessory work, like accessory work is a big part of my programming because I look at it in this way. It's like, okay, to what, like how much skill does this certain accessory take to execute, right? Because you can have tricep dips and tricep extensions. Yes, both, for example, they both hit triceps, but obviously the tricep dip takes more skill, like more skill to actually perform compared to like tricep extensions. And then that's like another thing I like to think about is like, okay, like genuinely, like whatever it takes, like the most amount of skill to execute will probably transfer over a lot more better into like the compounds, right? Because it's like, with belt squat, hyperextensions, and tricep dips, it's like the carryover is there. Like you're performing like somewhat of the same similar movement pattern, as you would like a squat, bench, deadlift. But if you're like in the hypertrophy sense, it's like, yes, you need to be able to enjoy training. So I'll probably, you know, we'll generally try to rotate that more around just because it's like, okay, let's keep the lifter healthy or trying to enjoy training. But if it's like filling in gaps or like they need a certain, like, they need to get something specific out of their accessory, then like I always generally try to, make sure like this is like important. Do not skip this because it's also like, with accessory work, like I always think of it in three categories. Like there's like certain skill, maybe there's a certain skill you're trying to fill in, or just hypertrophy, or there's a strength aspect to it. Because like with skill, there are like some lifters, maybe if like they can't, let's go with like soft touching on bench, right? If they can't understand how to soft touch like during their comp bench on like each day, what I generally like to do would be like, okay, go on the Smith machine, whether it be like incline or like flat, just practice like controlling the weight, like controlling the Smith machine down to your chest and practicing that soft touch there. Because it's also another thing about fatigue management. It's like, okay, like less is more. So if we can get like more skill out of something that's like less fatiguing, then like why not? So
Yeah, yeah, I get it. So this basically means that I need to cancel my Pinnacle membership and get a Planet Fitness membership and do all 4 of my bench days off the Switch.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, that's perfect.
High
So
skills
then,
fitness. Yes.
so then I guess the question here, since we're already kind of moving on to the topic about accessory work, is that what you guys personally like programming? Like, what do you think is kind of like perfectly rated, underrated in terms of you guys' program and athlete demands and success? And what do you think is like overrated, like something that you tried without a lot of success for like accessory programming?
I would
Give
say,
me a sec.
yeah, I got a few. So like overrated, I would definitely say like the main one that comes to my mind is leg press because I generally don't really program leg press in any sense because it's like at least in my experience, like some people have gone like they feel like they get like hip impingements and whatnot when they do leg press. So it's like okay, I'd rather just do a certain other movement. Perfectly rated, I would say um I would say like belt squat probably is perfectly rated. It's like it's not like I don't think this is new information about the belt squat. It literally mimics a squat pattern. Like what isn't
Mhm.
there? Like that's not underrated at all. I think underrated a thing that I've tested out and I've like shout out Tyler if y'all know Tyler. But me and him were talking about it, but using the application of hyperextensions and not just like a hypertrophy or like strength movement, but in also like a recovery sense too. Because we were talking one day and he was telling me how like he was using like he used hyperextensions on his primary squat day, and then like heading into his primary deadlift day, his hips would feel so much more loose, and then that got me thinking. I was like, like in like a biomechanics sense, like it makes sense on why that could like work. So then I gave it to like a lifter, like that would always respond telling me like his hips would feel pretty tight. So then he did that, and then his primary deadlift day felt really good. So I think that's hyperextensions is underrated in like that application.
And you're talking about Tyler from Prevail Training Systems or Prevail Performance, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to him. I think he had best lift at P3.
Oh yeah, Caleb Forte.
Yeah. The
That's
only
Ryan.
guy that might be benching more than Ryan right now.
That is a beast.
That's Ryan. That's
I'm
Ryan's
a,
op, bro.
That's right. It's off for Will.
he's a 90, so he's safe for now.
Yeah.
Bro, he's like an 84. Stop lying.
Is he? Did he weigh in that
I don't.
way?
That's a lie. Somebody told me he was like 84. I don't know.
No, I think he's like 88. I think he's a little heavier, but I'm not
Bro,
sure.
he DM'd me asking if I was gonna judge P3. I was like, you wish, bro.
Instant press command, bro.
Yeah.
Building off of Brandon's athlete, funny enough, I'm the opposite of what you said. I think underrated is like leg press. I think it's just like for me, I used to do a lot of belt squat, and then I started going to this gym for a little bit that just had like a terrible belt squat, and I just thought, man, I'm not progressing this one because it was just really bad. So I just started
Yeah.
doing the leg press instead, and for me it was a lot easier. It doesn't take a lot of skill, and for me it was good to get different movement in. It was good to get out of that squat pattern because I was just in that squat pattern a lot from this comp squat that I do, the low bar squat 2 times a week, and then the belt squat 2 times a week. And I was having some issues with just shifting and getting out of position, but the leg press really helped me get away from the hyper specificity and stayed more even overall, just being in a different movement than the squat movement. I think belt squat's a little overrated.
I think belt squat's
Ooh.
overrated.
Ooh,
It's
man.
just I was saying
Eight.
that when Brendan was saying it, but do you think belt squat's overrated in the world where like let's say all belt squats are created even? Do you still think it's overrated, or do you think it's like this belt squat is objectively better, and then if you have this one, it sucks, don't do it?
I think there's like two things to it. It's like one, a lot of belt squats are different, and then two, not everyone does it right off the rip. I've been having the people that coach who do belt squat, I've been having them record their belt squat, and usually like the first 2 or 3 times they send me the video, it looks very hingy, it looks very gross, it looks very the opposite of how their squat looks. But I think
So it's
if
not-
everyone
yeah.
had like a pitch arc at the gym, and then if everyone somehow knew how to do it right, it'd be a lot better. But there's those two big obstacles that are in the way.
So you're telling me that I shouldn't load up 10 plates on the belt squat and sit back. I should actually squat.
The sit
You
back
max it out,
part,
Kevin.
that's the
Yeah.
part I see all the time.
Max it out.
Yeah.
No,
No, I,
if I see Ryan doing like 10 plates, I'm doing 10 plates and a quarter.
Holy
There
moly.
we go.
no, I think that is a big thing. It's like if you have a belt squat at your gym, but it's like really, really bad, that's actually a problem that I ran into is I'm not gonna name any gyms, but I think Eric knows. Is we started running the belt squat on that, and yeah, like my squat and deadlift were going fine at times, but it ended up leading to problems where I was getting pain in my quad because that belt squat it was like hard, but I wasn't feeling it in my legs at all. Like I felt like I wasn't growing. It was just like hard for no reason.
Mhm.
And I think in a way you have to work around that. It's like a
Yeah.
bad machine could affect your training a lot.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like, I know you guys don't want to name the gym, but what was the belt squat you guys were using? Was it like a boat? Was it like a Titan? Was it like a Bells of Steel?
I have no idea what brand it was. I didn't even look.
I don't remember.
Didn't you
but I
look? Are
remember
you
that
sure it
one.
was? Are you sure it was
super
even a
hard.
belt squat?
It was. It was. There was two. There was two of them, but both of them aren't great. I think Rhino is like by far the best one I've used.
Not really. Yeah, I think the Rhino and the pitch shark are like the top
Yeah,
two.
Bit Shark too.
Yeah.
I kind of like the Rhino better than. I actually do like the Rhino a lot. The only issues, I worked for a gym a long time ago, and the only issues that the cable that the Rhino comes out of that you attach to the belt, it comes out like the little track all the time.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
and
about.
it takes like 10 people to put it back in. One time it was so bad because when the owners was like Strongman, he had to pick up the whole belt squat Rhino and we had to pull out the cable
Oh,
and put it back in.
gosh.
That's
That's a
cooked.
nightmare.
Yeah, that's cooked.
So Ryan, do you want to go into like accessories that you think are overrated, perfectly rated, maybe underrated?
One big thing I actually want to talk about that Brandon already talked about was underrated, definitely hyperextensions. I think that is one main accessory that keeps my whole program together. It helps with my squat and deadlift too. I do it on 2 days before my primary deadlift, and it just gets me moving a lot better. And I even do it before squat. It's just to get my posterior chain moving a little more. It's because I was always very quad dominant, so it's just like something to help me like go forward in the movement.
Yeah, I think hyperextensions are underrated, but they're also exercise that's easy to do wrong or easy
yeah.
to have maybe too much lower back rather than glutes and
Yeah.
hams.
You don't need
that's
to
also-
load
just
like
you-
4
no.
plates. You don't need to
No,
load
back
4
extension's easy. Just use your belt when you do back extensions.
Yeah,
I take out the Torah all the time when I do it.
that's funny. Yeah,
I knew a guy that actually did that. I knew a guy who wore his belt for back extensions.
that's funny.
No.
I remember
That's
like
Yeah.
you wrote that on my program one time. I was like, remember to use your belt on the hyperextension. I was like, what the hell? I was like, dude, like, why am I using my lower back for this, bro? But
I don't want to mention any of his maxes, so it gets a little too personal. But he didn't deadlift more than 500. I'll tell you that. I'm being serious.
oh man, yeah,
it's easy to load, just like the belt squat. Funny enough, it's
Yeah.
easy to load like way too much, and then it's using different muscle groups, and then it gets carried away, and then the transfer isn't the best. But you can get away with less is more
yeah,
on both of those.
yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of going like off of that is like like I think a lot of people generally have this idea is like, oh, like in order to grow, we need to push our accessories, right? But then it's also like depending on the accessory and the purpose, I personally find it is like, okay, depending on like what this accessory it holds, like for example, say like it takes like a high amount of skill to perform, it's probably like a better idea to not like, we still want to push it, of course. Like we don't want it just to be like RP5, right? But we don't need to push it to the degree where like, oh, we're going to a failure, right? Because if we're using like, like a belt squat, for example, maybe we don't want to push that too hard. Maybe we just like focus on the movement or like even leg press, like maybe, focus on like the movement itself. And if we're trying to like, build your quads for hypertrophy, maybe we'll just go like till failure on leg extensions because then it's like the fatigue is gonna be like you're not gonna be as like beat up as like use if you went to failure with leg extensions as compared to if you went to failure with like leg press. So
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, the takeaway is that with accessories, there's some accessories that are a bad idea to max out on. So the Lion should wear injuries when he does leg press.
yeah,
I love saying that because I saw one of my friends wear fucking injuries for leg press. I was like, that shit's kind of fire. I wonder
yeah.
how much I can do.
It reminds me
But
of the one post Ryan made where it's like talking about the naked squats and like making sure to
Mhm.
not use knee sleeves when you're doing accessory work. So I mean, that's a lot. That's another thing
yeah,
that people forget is like they try to use their ego, on these like accessories, but they're using like equipment for it. It's like, dude, like it's there to help like facilitate
yeah,
a base, not to like make your ego bigger. So
Mhm.
yeah, definitely not me. One time, Eric saw me doing belt squats at the same weight that I was doing my hammer strength press at. So there's definitely no ego when I do belt squat.
that's fire.
But if you guys don't mind me chiming in about overrated accessory, this is
Yeah.
one that I generally feel like I have the least amount of success with, at least with squat, is pendulum squat.
Mm.
I have generally gotten the most complaints about an athlete overloading the pendulum squat and then getting really bad knee pain. And it's happened to like 4 of them. So I
Yeah.
think pendulum squat is unusually overrated, which, I mean, if we think about it, like, obviously it doesn't mimic the squat pattern too much. It still requires some like technical skill. It still requires you to do that. And like, like pendulum squats are also all built differently. Like an Arsenal is not the same weight as one that's made by Boat Fitness, and it's not the same weight as one that's made by Atlantis. And so almost all the issues that you guys kind of have with like belt squat, I think applies even more to the fucking pendulum squat.
What if
I've
the
had like,
what if it didn't give like anyone pain? What if they could do it pain free? What would you think of it then?
I don't know, because then even it would bring up gaps in programming. I mean, I haven't really sat down and had a lift to be like, yeah, I generally feel stronger off the pendulum set. I feel so primed out the hole. But funny enough, like I agree with Eric that I think accessories are pretty good is like leg press. Like I have a lot of success programming AMRAP leg press, which then goes into like kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum where like sometimes we have lifters that don't push their accessories hard enough. And so I had somebody that reach out to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm coaching a girl. She's having difficulties out the hole on her primary squat day." And I was like, "Just give her AMRAP leg press. Just tell her to do a set to like RP 7-8, and then tell her to take the same weight and just AMRAP it and see what happens." So I'm actually a huge fan of leg press. I think this, like techno skill involved is way less. You could just put plates on it, just go at it, and even if you fail, you could just climb out. And I mean, the amount of fatigue that you actually, gather from a leg press is probably pretty low. Like the only injury I ever heard is that do you guys remember? Um, it's not Eddie Hall and it's not Thor. It was like the other strongman. He was kind of small. Eric, do you remember who I'm talking about? You never watched Strongman.
He was kind of small. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
for
don't
real.
know if
A strongman
But
that's
there was some,
small.
but there was some strongman who was like leg pressing 1,000, and the only complaint I ever heard is apparently the force through the leg press cracked one of his ribs.
my
What
gosh.
the heck?
He's a big guy, I'm sure.
But I mean, that means it takes a lot for you to go ahead and truly like over fatigue yourself and be on cooked for a leg press versus maybe like us doing like a sit back belt squat.
Yeah, but even with leg press, there's like a ton of different machines with that. Like that's even more than the belt squat. There's a few. There's a few ones that are like really, really good, and then most of them are like good enough. That's fine.
Most of them are. Well, I mean, we were in Reno and you were like that leg press we were on.
Yeah, the Matrix one. That one was pretty good.
I think it was the only thing you liked at that gym.
It's funny.
It was an interesting. It was just like a commercial gym. I like the Matrix one and the Cybex one. Cybex squat press. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, the
Squat
Cybex
presses are
squat press
good.
is fire.
Yeah.
The squat press is fire.
You want an Iron Cowboy?
We'll probably
The
get
one
one.
at Iron Cowboy is not too bad though. So it's like pretty good to get the job done.
Yeah. Speaking of like kind of we talk about like different brands. So how would y'all feel if you had a lifter that constantly rotated gyms?
The cases where that happens, it's more when somebody has like a job that requires either travel, or maybe they're in North Houston for half the week, and then they're in South Houston or the other half. For if someone's doing that just for fun, then if they're progressing, that's fine. That's the main thing. If they're progressing, they're good. But if it's for work, that's a little more of a different case.
Mhm.
If they're usually, if it's really just depends like how often they're doing it. If they're doing it really often, I prefer not. But if it's like their job, I think they'll be able to make the most of it, and they'll be able to get by because they're just so used to it.
100%. Because, yeah, if you have like a lifter that just randomly goes to a different gym, it's like now it's like I feel like in a sense like if you just have lifters that just randomly gym hop like from time to time, I feel like for example it makes it harder to like, like there's gonna be comp equipment everywhere, but like in terms of accessory equipment, everything's gonna vary. Like one gym might have like this certain brand while the other one doesn't. So I feel like that also makes it harder to like track your progress on accessories to a certain degree.
Mhm.
And it's like one of those things like, I feel like even if you had a job, right? Like even if you're traveling, but if you're traveling in a consistent like area, right? Then your training is probably going to be still somewhat consistent as compared to a lifter that like is just training randomly. Let's say like, they normally train at like all the way in like compound, right? They train all the way in compound. They have a certain like let's for example, let's say they have compound got this machine where it's like the hyperextension, but it has the cable with the handle. Um, but they go to like maybe Rise and they don't have that like the hyperextension with the cable and the handle. So then they're training.
Rise has that one.
Oh, it does? Oops.
That example.
Yeah.
No. But that hyperextension at Rise with the handle is a pendulum. It goes
Oh yeah,
through a loop.
isn't that like plate loaded? That's not even like a
Yeah, that one's plate loaded. It's a
Yeah.
booty builder, I think.
yeah,
But it is up.
Yeah,
because
but Rise has.
but it's
Yeah.
similar concept. All right, let's just use TSS Houston for example. Then obviously they're gonna have to use like like just free weights to do their hyperextensions as compared to a machine and like
Yes, because TSS Houston has no great machines. It's all
Yeah.
trash.
and obviously
I'm just-
the conversion's a lot more different. So then I feel like that
Yeah.
makes it harder for you to track your accessories. So
Yeah, I think if you're in that situation, you're just going to need to push hard, like make sure you're really pushing hard. Keep
Yeah.
yourself
accountable.
in check.
Yeah. Or you could just be accountable in the first place. Like Eric's the busiest guy I know, and he goes to Iron Cowboy every day.
I don't know. What can I say?
Every day after work, even on Sundays.
Holy,
Not every day. Not on Sundays. Yeah.
I've yet to
No,
make an Iron
Ryan-
Cowboy trip.
Oh my god.
You haven't?
I have
Not
thought you went
once.
No,
I thought you went.
no,
I thought you guys were all in town.
no.
Brandon, I'm in Houston next week. Let's go to Iron Cowboy.
Yeah, I'm a yellow pull. We'll see what I can pull. No, but no, I think the time I told you I was supposed to go to Iron Cowboy, we didn't go because I think we went to Rise instead. Because
Oh, okay.
because no one told us if they're gonna be there. Because I asked Ryan and he was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
I
they'll
don't
train
remember.
Iron Cowboy."
Oh, that was I remember that day.
Yeah.
So Ryan, what are your experiences, or maybe how would you want to work with a lifter that likes to rotate gyms pretty frequently, but also to make it easier? Like it's not like they're rotating gyms very randomly. Like you tell you like, hey, I'm gonna go train off the TSS pad at 5, and then you get a video at 7, and it's like them at Fitness Connection on the top set. But it's a very
So-
consistent like, hey, like Mondays I'm at like Fitness Connection, Wednesdays I'm at Iron Cowboy, so on, so on.
Mhm.
It's easier if it's like that, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's how I am. I'm 2 days at one gym, 2 days at Iron Cowboy, so it's very manageable because my accessories are all the same, and I make sure I go the same day. Like Tuesday, I'm always going to make the drive to Iron Cowboy because I know I have belt squat that day, and that keeps me moving. But for compounds, again, I feel like it gets a little trickier. It's You can work around it, say like moving primary bench days to like the days they go to the better gym with the better pad. Like, of course, that's going to be better. But say if you have 2 days on like a commercial gym and they're really technical, I feel like most likely you're gonna be able to see it. It's gonna, it's just gonna be a little sloppy that day, and it's not gonna transfer over the best to the better pad day and then primary day possibly.
Yeah, sometimes students have this thing where they have powerlifting practice, maybe like 2 out of 4 or 5 of their days, and then the other half of the week is at the rec center. But if you're able to have your heavier days at the powerlifting practice, I think that's
Yeah.
really good because usually those days are consistent. We'll have a set schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree. I mean, there's nothing really else to say. So I mean, yeah.
I would say I would want my college pilot to do all their days on the rec center
Man,
Rec
and
center's
only go to
fun.
the powerlifting practices to get bad cues from everybody.
that's fire.
Good cues at the rec center.
Even better, get them at the rec center. That's true.
And so then talking about rotating then, so would like would you take in the programming sense, would y'all take into consideration like when they rotate gyms, would you take that in consideration with programming? Like would you make sure like if they're at a certain gym on this day, you want them to have them do a certain thing like on that day, for example?
Yeah, if they're at the good gym, if they're always at the good gym on like Tuesday and Thursday, I'd want their heavy days to be Tuesday and Thursday.
Mhm.
They'll get more out of it. They'll be more around more. Probably be around more people they like if they like that gym more. The equipment will be good. Just a lot of good stuff.
Mhm. Kevin, you
Yeah.
got anything?
No, pretty much all the same things. Since we did talk about kind of like the flow of accessory programming and more like actual like comp lifts, sometimes I'm a little bit more biased to give them maybe like the secondary, tertiary focused bench day if it has a little bit more accessory work at like the commercial gym, just because I feel like there could be some machines there that could contribute towards like those fitness gaps or those skill gaps that we mentioned before. Like I'm like, like if obviously a commercial gym has a really, really great Smith machine and I want them to do 3 sets of 10 off of it. And obviously, like the powerlifting gym doesn't have a Smith machine, like, that's where priorities would kind of go in terms of like programming certain days of the weeks, why, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Brendan, do you have anybody that does that? That like you purposely set their schedule to be like that?
No, because like if I have a lifter that goes to commercial gym, it's probably just because like it's a random thing. Like it's probably a schedule issue more than anything. But generally, most of my lifters they either train consistently at a powerlifting gym or just consistently train at the like a rec or a commercial gym. So
I've had a few students I've had to work with on that,
mhm.
but they're fine. They just do the heavy days on the day they're there, and then the secondary days, or maybe if they just have a light session on the other days, and they're able to make it work.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Ryan, you got any input?
Um, I
You
don't
have
know if
any
I have
Crunch
any tools.
Fitness? You have any Crunch Fitness warriors?
Me?
Uh, no. I have one guy that's overseas, and he's more at a commercial gym. I don't know how good like I don't even know what the bars are, but I'm assuming they're more like commercial gym. But that's consistent because that's like the only option that he has, and sometimes that's what you got to work with, and you can still get
Yeah.
strong. Like that's
He
not.
doesn't want it. He doesn't want it bad enough. He could order like a brand new set from Eleiko, get the Eleiko Power Bar,
Yeah.
Elo plates. He could spend like 6K before shipping. You just don't want it enough.
There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
How'd you, bro? It's like how'd you even find that like overseas lifter?
It was from Eric.
Ah,
Eric was a little out of budget, so he kind of just sent him my way.
I see. Where's he based at, like country wise?
Saudi Arabia.
Ah, dang.
Yeah.
Shout out
See?
Midori.
The amount of money he's saving from not coaching with Eric could be going towards that Laker rack.
This is true.
Save up each month.
Now speaking
That
of
guy,
that,
I don't even realize if he has another option.
Yeah, no.
It's just-
We were talking about that. It's like he's saying I don't remember the exact reason, but it's like he says the gym was gonna close like a certain day. And he couldn't train on like a Friday. And I was like, yeah, you can just move that day because it's not gonna be the biggest deal, but it's like that's literally the only place he can go.
yeah. So then I guess like in a communication aspect, this one's gonna be more towards Ryan. So like, how's communication then with that? Like with having an overseas lifter?
I thought honestly it was gonna be a lot worse. Like time zones would really affect it, where it's gonna be like he's gonna be training like whenever I'm sleeping or something like that. So it's gonna take me a little while to get back to him.
Mhm.
But I'm pretty sure they're 6 hours ahead, and he normally trains like midday, like 12:1, I want to say. So like that's usually right before I train or during. So I usually respond to him fine like that, and it's not, it's not the biggest deal. And that's like the one guy I'm always like, give me 24 hours. I haven't taken that long yet, but I'm saying like, give me 24 hours just in case it's like he responds to me right when I go to sleep, and it's like first thing in the morning. Like I might not always get back to him right away, but it's like most of the time it's not. It's not that big of a challenge.
Yeah, it should be fine within.
Mhm.
As long as I'm sure he understands. Just make it clear.
Mhm.
And that's-
Yeah. It's just sessions like that is if you have any questions like about the session before, then it's like make sure like you let your coach know in advance, because they're like most of the time they're not going to be able to get back to you. But he already knows that.
Yeah, that's huge. Like even I have a policy where it's kind of like, which like all my athletes are either in my time zone or 1 hour behind. But I'm just kind of like, hey, send me a message if you go into the gym, and I could let you know whether or not I could respond. If the training session has such a high priority that you feel like you need my attention.
Yeah.
And, they don't. That's on them. I'm like, hey, I don't have to be on my phone.
Yeah. I think that's also like another big thing in terms of that is like also how the athlete, it's like it's more than just like to send videos. It's like also like giving your input, like as an athlete, giving your input on like how training is, right? Because if for example like the athlete doesn't understand like certain like a technique that you're trying to throw at them, it's like it's their job to also try to break it down for you so that even if y'all are like responding like hours at a time and whatnot, you guys are still having a somewhat like productive conversation. It was just like another big important thing is just like how you actually give feedback, because obviously if the lifter, like if he's like 5 hours behind you and you're like it's like 11 p.m. for you and you're about to go to bed and all he does is send a video, then it is kind of hard to be like trying to communicate in a sense, as opposed to if they sent you a video and they like try to break it down to you, then it's a lot easier to have a more productive conversation, even if you guys are like the big time zone and whatnot.
Which is actually horrible because whenever I ask my athletes, like, why do you never give any feedback and send a video? I've had several that were like, oh, we just send the video and not say anything because it went great. And I was like, why don't you just say it went great?
Yeah.
So now I just message back athletes like, hey, it moved a little slow. What do you think? And then they could just straight up be like, it didn't move slow at all. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's my now new favorite first response when I don't get feedback. It's like, moved a little slow, don't you think?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome indeed. Let me see. Kevin does have to leave in like a few minutes. Let's see.
Yeah, I do have to leave. I need to go train.
Oh yeah, that's right. I think that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
pretty much all the questions. So I mean,
We got a lot done.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was honestly a very, very enjoyable, productive conversation, I will say.
Yes.
So yeah,
Productive conversation.
yeah.
Hold up. Let me go ahead and let me first tell the guy I'm staying here with. So we cut off the live stream right now. Hey, Joseph, give me like 3 minutes to go and put on some shorts underneath these. Bet. So let me change this to some virus shorts, but you guys don't get to see that.
All right.
That's what the only that's what the only fams.
We'll include this into the bloopers. of the
Hell
the
nah.
podcast. Bro, how do you even end a
But-
podcast?
I don't know.
What you mean? How do you?
No.
Hey,
You
dude.
just did it.
That's
Hey.
all.
Seconds.
Yeah, I gotta put on
Yeah.
pants.
Yeah.
That's such a good addition.
Yeah.
All right. If you
All right.
guys made it to the end of the podcast, thank you for listening. Hope you guys got something out of it. But yeah, if make sure
Yes.
to follow everyone on their ats and whatnot. So yeah.
Yes.